Here's question 2D. So it talks about the first paragraph of the results and looking at limiting sugar in drinks. So we first want to check that the numbers have been correctly interpreted. So I can look at in the report it talks about 46% said there definitely should be limits, and that matches 45.7, so that's been rounded up correctly, so that matches correctly. Then we're told that 32% could possibly be such limits, and if I look at the graph, the actual data, that's 31.5%, which has been rounded up to 32%. So that gives us a total of 77.2% who possibly or definitely think that sugar should be limited in drinks. So that means I'm okay with that. All right, I'm quite happy with those summary statistics there that have been reported. But the second part, the last part there, talks about that more than 75% in total think definitely or possibly. So this is a claim, and we need to do a confidence interval to check this claim. Okay, so those are the two things we're going to compare. So we're going to look for the combined definite and possible is 77.2%. That's a single sample, and we're not doing any comparison. So my margin of error is just 1.7%, the one that we've used before. My confidence interval is going to be my estimate, which is that 77.2%, plus or minus the margin of error of 1.7%. When I do this, I'm going to get this confidence interval. So I get from 75.5% up to 78.9%. So that means both those limits, the upper and lower, they're both above 75%. So that means I agree with the statement that more than 75% in total support limits on sugar. So conclusions such as this are going to be correct in the long run for about 95% of all surveys. So let's take this another step further and work towards our excellence. So our rule of thumb works well if, and this is a key criteria, if the probability that we're estimating is between 0.3 and 0.7, then that margin of error formula, 1 over the square root of n, that formula works really, really well. However, if we've got probabilities that are outside those limits, then our margin of error formula is not particularly accurate anymore. And we've got a probability of 77.2, which turns into a proportion of 0.772. Now that proportion is bigger than 0.7, so it's outside of that limit, which means the actual margin of error at that point is going to be smaller than expected. So think about your normal distribution. If we're talking about the areas in the tail, that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's like our estimate is getting more and more accurate as we get into these extreme values. So in terms of marking, if you can identify the survey percentages, so our 45 and our 32%, and link those to the statement in the survey, then that would get you an achieved. If you can go on to justify it and look at that, calculating that margin of error, calculating the confidence interval and showing that yes, 75% is a correct claim, then that would get you your merit. And if you can go on to talk about proportion has to be between 0.3 and 0.7, then that would get you the excellence. And then of course the marks for the overall question too.